skip. Get ready. It's going to be a very, very intense journey. Begin.
Oh, are we live?
He's
I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Frame Skip podcast. This is the final episode of our sequel trilogy recap of Star Wars. I am joined with me by the voice of the Peach State himself. It is Austin Eller. It is the Peach State, right?
Yes, on behalf of all Georgians, it is the Peach State. And you know what, Seth? You know what's interesting? We're not even the state that grows the most peaches.
That's ridiculous. I think you need to step it up. Fight for your honor.
If we need to grow more, you know, it's just, we don't grow enough, I would say.
Yeah. You see, Pennsylvania is the Keystone State, and I don't know what that means. So, is it the keystone of the United States? I don't think so. So I'm not really sure.
I think a lot of building material was harvested in Pennsylvania. Like, didn't all the rock that was used in building the Empire State Building come from Pennsylvania?
I don't know. We do have a significant amount of like mines that just pull out shale and like stuff like that, like rock. So maybe
was the rock born in
tunnels
Pennsylvania?
Too.
No, the rock was born in the like Hawaiian Islands? No.
Samoa?
Samoa.
He totally was. And in hindsight, what a stupid question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Samoan is like his whole thing.
Yeah. And
then the other voice is the voice of Shortbox himself, George Office, the successful one. The chosen one, if you will.
Oh.
George, do you remember when The Rock left pro wrestling to film The Scorpion King and got tattoos just for that movie and just rolled with it for the rest of his life?
Yes, I do.
What a commitment. What a commitment.
Also, you remember when he came back to wrestling and then left again to film The Tooth Fairy?
Yes.
Dude, what a stellar movie.
How cool is Dwayne The Rock Johnson, first off? I mean, to just do whatever you want, right? He's just like, yeah, I feel like wrestling again. So I'm just going to walk back in the WWE and become their champion. And they're all just like, absolutely, man. You're the best we got. And he's like, yeah, I feel like making $20 billion. I'm just going to put out a crap movie about some natural disaster.
I'm going to argue that he's taken a hit the past couple years and is no longer as cool as he used to be.
I was very turned off by the Black Adam stuff that he did, where he was like in denial that movie was a failure. And he was like being very immature about it, I thought.
Yeah.
I saw the first half hour. First half hour was fine.
Why didn't you see the rest,
sleepy. George? Well, because I started at 1:30 in the morning and I was like, I don't really want to fall asleep to this movie. I think I'll watch it tomorrow. And that was like 4 weeks ago. So I should get back on that.
Well, speaking of movies, we're talking tonight about a movie that never came to be. It was the original episode 9, written by Colin Trevorrow, called Duel of the Fates.
And Derek Connolly.
I did not pick that up.
It says it on the front of the script.
Yeah, sure does. Before we
first page.
Before we really jump into the script, do you guys have like a history with Colin Trevorrow? I think he's probably like the better known of these two.
I don't have a history of him. No. Enlighten us, George, if you could.
All right, so Colin Trevorrow, I first heard of him because he was actually a working director and writer living in Vermont, and that's where I went to school, and I was a film student in Vermont. And so he had a movie come out in 2012 called Safety Not Guaranteed, and that was my first exposure to this guy. And this movie was based off like a wanted ad in the newspaper, where it was just like, hey, I have a time machine, must bring your own weapons, safety not guaranteed. Like, it was like an actual thing that appeared in a newspaper. They bought the rights to it. And I think that movie's incredible. It stars Aubrey Plaza, stars Jake Johnson from New Girl. I think it is a very, very enjoyable movie. Very sweet. Oh, Mark Duplass is in it too. Big indie guy. And so then it seemed kind of weird when a couple years later to me that 2015, Yeah, 3 years later, he jumped into Jurassic World, which was, I think it eventually passed whatever Marvel movie came out that year to be like the highest grossing movie of the year.
Yeah.
And when I talked to him in 2012, he like came to my screenwriting class, did like a little Q&A. We were both walking the same direction after. He was like walking downtown. I was going to my apartment. And he asked for a cigarette because I started smoking one. And then we just sat there and we just talked about the fight choreography in Batman Begins and what we thought it meant for Nolan's vision of the movie. Because that's what dumb college kids want to talk about. Hell, that's what dumb 33-year-old me kind of wants to talk about too. And then he told me like the movie projects he was like working on at the time. And like his passion project was a remake of this movie called Flight of the Navigator, which is a Disney movie about a kid who basically gets abducted by an alien spaceship. And then the kid is gone for 5 minutes, except that he's actually gone for like 20 years to everyone else. And I'm like, huh, like I'm really looking forward to that. And then I see Colin Trevorrow directing Jurassic World, and then I hear he's attached to direct and write a Star Wars movie. So I just can't believe that this dude with such strong indie roots kind of became like a blockbuster king out of nowhere. Say what you will about the Jurassic movies. I didn't see the last one. They at least are like competently made blockbusters.
Yeah.
They're
The
fun.
first two.
They're
Yeah.
fun. I have some questions about that world and why they keep doing this, but
Mhm.
you got to suspend your disbelief a little bit, I suppose. They're
Sure.
making frickin' dinosaurs on a frickin' island, right?
Yeah.
Now, George, since you had that experience, was this sort of like a surreal thing reading a Star Wars script written by this guy?
It was, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I know this guy. Like I said, we've had 2 conversations over the course of like a 90-minute interaction. So I'm not going to pretend to be
cool.
It's incredibly cool. I'm not going to pretend to know the guy. I'm not going to pretend to know his politics, his preference, whatever. I just know that like we both thought that the camera work on Batman Begins was very intentional to make it seem like, oh yeah, this guy is like out of nowhere. That's why the fighting is so obscured, because like the people he was fighting had never seen anything like it, and we, the audience, in theory, had never seen anything like it either. And we are like, yeah, that's why I thought they did. He's like, yeah, me too. I was like, sick. I'm a good film student. That's about where it starts and ends with my relationship with Colin Trevorrow. But it is fucking surreal to me that like I remember sitting in my internet cafe at campus doing work, and I'd be like, oh, God, I'm so bored, checking out IGN and seeing like the rumor that he was like attached to direct this movie.
Yeah, and I imagine like I would be absolutely stoked if I like knew JJ Abrams, or not knew him, but like had a meeting with JJ Abrams, and he was just some like indie dude, and then all of a sudden he was directing Star Wars. So I can imagine that was pretty sweet for you.
Yeah, it was.
So in case I don't remember if I said it or not, we are this week we read the leaked script and went over some of the leaked concept art of Episode 9 that was originally supposed to be, and I originally started this sequel trilogy recap years ago to have like a discussion of the sequel trilogy, because I find it very interesting, very weird, and very annoyingly divisive, where no one can just have an honest conversation about it. And I think so far we've done a very good job of going over this, and I feel like it would be a disservice to it to not talk about what could have been for Episode 9 in the original vision. So I read this today. I think you guys read it in the past few days, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who don't know, apparently Colin Trevorrow and Daisy Ridley. Now this is all rumors, but this is what I was reading. Colin Trevorrow and Daisy Ridley met at some other event. I forget for what it was. And Daisy Ridley asked him, like what was going to be the overall fate of her character. And Colin Trevorrow took her to the back because they were around a whole bunch of other people, told her. Apparently she loved it, brought tears to her eyes. But Kathleen Kennedy did not like it, I guess, is what I'm hearing. Now, I think the hate boner people have for Kathleen Kennedy is a little weird, considering they people like to pretend that she had nothing to do with the good parts of Star Wars that we've gotten recently, and she has everything to do with the bad parts. And I think that's just I think that's a little unintellectual, how I would say that, right? Like it's a little silly to think that she has nothing to do with like the Mandalorian or Ahsoka or anything like that. Like she's clearly still overseeing.
But you love the Bad Batch, though. Okay, well.
Yeah, well, I didn't like the Bad Batch.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying in general. Like,
right? Yeah, exactly. and Rebels, right, and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think we can all agree the sequel trilogy was a disaster. But I don't know. Just opening thoughts. I don't know how you guys feel. I read this script and I was completely fucking flabbergasted that they threw this out and gave the Rise of Skywalker script that we got the go ahead, because I think this is so cool and so well written, and it feels like a natural progression of the previous two movies. It feels like all those things that we were waiting for were a payoff. It feels, I felt like it made the what I would consider sandbagging that Ryan Johnson did to J.J. Abrams worth it in the end. I think that Colin Trevorrow took that twist and worked with it in a way that was really cool and made sense. So, just opening thoughts, George. How did you feel about this?
I cried like at least 5 times reading the script. I thought it was like beautiful. I thought it was really, really smart the way they did it. And I don't know if there's anything as visually interesting as what we got in Rise of Skywalker. Like, I don't love that movie, but like I think I said this on the last podcast we did. Like the moments of that movie are great. Like explaining that movie to someone, it's like easy to get hyped up for that movie. Like just the shots of like Rey and Kylo like duking it out on the Death Star wreckage as like a tumultuous storm rises among. I'm like, that's just a fucking cool scene. Like there's no two ways about it. Whether you appreciate what it does for the story or not, like it just looks cool. And there were some moments. Granted, like this is just a script. I think it was 126 pages.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
So that's just over 2 hours. So it's a little leaner than what we ended up getting from Rise of Skywalker. General rule for Hollywood is a minute a page, right? And so this one is 20 minutes, 25 minutes shorter than Rise of Skywalker, with just, I think, beautiful story beats that Seth, like, hit on the head. Like, it just brings everything full circle and offers a payoff that we didn't quite get. And my favorite thing about it is, except for one scene that I think we're going to get into, there's no jerking around, like making you think something happened only to undo it literally 90 seconds later. You know, like there's no fake death of Chewbacca in this. I guess there kind of is. We can talk about that when we get there. But no, I just thought this movie script was beautiful from start to finish.
Yeah.
Austin, what about you?
I loved it. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, and we all kind of talked about on the episode 8 and 9 episodes that we've recorded over the past couple of weeks, you know, one point I made, and I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of you guys, so I can't recall what you all said, but for me, I really felt that with episode 9, they should have just taken what they were dealt with episode 8, what Ryan Johnson provided, and just continued and stuck the landing. I mean, at that point, they were 2 episodes, two long movies into this sequel trilogy, and instead of retconning everything like they did with episode 9, they should have just stuck the landing and took what they got and finished it. And that's not what they did, obviously. And this script, however, had this actually happened, had episode 9, Duel of the Fates, actually happened, that is essentially what we are given here, is a conclusion to what we received with 7 and 8, rather than these clashing directors, you know, clashing scripts as we were provided, you know, in reality. And, you know, I do have a few issues with the script still. I still think there are a few weird things here and there, but like as a whole, this sounds so badass, and I truly wish it had happened.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree also. I have some issues with the script here, but nothing that I feel is completely breaking like we got in episode 9, the real episode 9. And I describe episode 9, the Rise of Skywalker, as like a fever dream, right? Like it's all kind of disjointed. It's a complete mess. That doesn't flow well. And this feels like Colin Trevorrow and Ryan Johnson sat down and they figured out a way forward. and I really respect it, and I do wish that this was the version that we had gotten. I have to wonder what it was that they looked at this and said, we can't go forward with it. Because my assumption is they got scared off by the massive negative reception of The Last Jedi. And they were like, all right, we gotta do something. We gotta retcon this. But I will say, going into it, the Rise of Skywalker did take some inspiration from the script, I think. I think that,
Trevorrow has a story by script, which means like I forget the number, but that means like there's a assignable percentage of the Rise of Skywalker that we got that belongs to this script that they took from this script. So he did. I don't know if it's like 15%. Like there's some number, I just don't remember what it is. And so like I think a lot of the moments in this script we see in Rise of Skywalker, right? It's just it's like seasoned to taste differently in Rise of Skywalker than here.
It's like the Rise of Skywalker's like, you tried to put salt on your meal, but you didn't realize the salt lid was loose, and you poured the whole thing on, and you tried to salvage it, and it's just disgusting.
Sugar by accident,
Just disgusting. So we talked about this and how we were going to approach this, me and Austin, right before you came in, George. And Disney had a bad habit of striking down a lot of videos that were going line by line over this. So we thought we would break this out into a more general section by section and kind of go over it that way. Is that cool with you?
Very cool. Yeah.
And by the way, just for the listeners, I don't think legally that we could provide this script. So I would encourage you to just do some searching around online, find it, and of course read it, because it's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, and it only takes like, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe to read through it if you're slow.
If you've never read a script before, it's really interesting. It's really cool because it's not as dense as a book, and it still makes you picture shit in your head like you're reading a book. So if novels aren't your thing, man, do I recommend just checking out more scripts.
Yeah, and it was weird because I felt like I was able to picture this in my head a lot more so than even if I was reading a book for some reason, just the way it was written.
That's how it's written. Like it's supposed to be like a Bible, right, for everyone. And so like they take this and they cut it up and then they do storyboards, right? And that's like the visual Bible for like how the movie's supposed to look. And then from there they like break it down into like the fashion team or whatever to figure out like the costumes. And so like it is supposed to be incredibly visual, like the most visual can be while being the most sparse it can be at the same time.
So with that being said, let's jump right into it here. The movie starts out with the opening crawl that explains that the First Order has kind of taken over the whole galaxy, and they are just completely shutting down any sort of unrest and rebellion, and they've cut contact between the systems so that these they can't form together and create some sort of like new rebellion to rally against. And I find that interesting because they're kind of looking back at what happened to the Empire and being like, well, that's not happening again. We're shutting down any sort of rebellion. And the first part of this that we get is them having an operation on a planet called Kuat. It's apparently like a it doesn't really say. Does it say what they're mining? It's some sort of ore, I think. Right?
It's a shipyard, right? Like that's like an established legends place.
Yeah,
like
I think so. I think you're right about that.
Yeah,
it does say some sort of shipyard.
That was the only place I was a little not positive about based on the script. I had a hard time imagining Kuat, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But
when in doubt, just imagine like rocky desert. That seems to be a pretty good default for a lot of Star Wars locations, right? Little arid. Yeah.
Yeah, it says an industrial planet located in the Kuat system of the galaxy, and Kuwati people. It was a shipbuilding industrial planet. So they were mining something. They had a massive orbital ring outside the planet with star destroyers, and they were essentially had this like giant sky lift that was taking ore and materials back and forth between the orbital ring and the planet. And they pretty much had a like I don't want to say slave power
They were
over, but like, it was
they were
very impressive.
they were slaves, man. Come on.
Yeah, well, they never outwardly say like the whole like planet, but yeah, I would agree that it's like a slave thing. They go out of their way in this to make sure that you understand that the First Order is like very oppressive. They're pushing down on the citizens of the galaxy in a really brutal way. And in some of the scenes that they go over in this script are extremely graphic. But what we get is an undercover operation with the three heroes, the well, I guess four heroes, Rose is included, but the main three of the trilogy here, Rose is there, and then we got Rey, Finn, and Poe, and they are undercover, and they're trying to essentially put bombs in the skylift and blow up the orbital ring. I mean, at least that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same way for me.
I thought this was a really cool opening. They obviously their plan runs into some issues, and Rey is there undercover as a Tusken Raider, which I thought was really interesting.
Loved it.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And she turns on her lightsaber, and she's got a makeshift lightsaber from the separated halves that they blew apart in The Last Jedi, and she modified her classic staff to make a dual saber. And I think that is perfect. That's what we all wanted to see from Rey originally.
Dude, and it makes so much sense too. I know one of my big complaints last episode, and it's a small little thing, but it's like the end of Last Jedi, like they focus so much on this fight between Rey and Kylo Ren and the lightsaber splitting in half. And then the next movie, they're just like, oh, it's fine. Like, it's fixed.
She wraps some
fixed
leather around it.
No issues.
Yeah.
And so this like taking that split and then putting in a dual blade lightsaber, I mean, awesome.
Yeah, it makes sense because she was already used to wielding a staff, and I think that this was a natural progression of her character. I think it's perfect. I do wonder why they decided to stick with a single bladed lightsaber for her, and maybe just to keep the lineage of the Skywalker lightsaber. I have no idea, but in the concept art that leaked, you see her running in the front with the lightsaber, and Poe and Finn behind her shooting out with a bunch of First Order troopers. And I feel like they took inspiration from Luke Skywalker's Episode 6 outfit, because she's wearing like a very dark like suit type thing that was under the Tusken Raider. That's the way I interpreted it anyway. I thought maybe they were trying to throw back to Luke Skywalker. But early on, they established that there's a very awkward like relationship between Rey and Poe. And I thought this was a little bit of a weird setup, although I understand it.
Yes.
Oscar Isaac, beautiful human being. How could you not? You know, like that makes sense.
Yeah.
But and I understand because it fits very well within the isolated story of Duel of the Fates, but it's not hinted at or like given any sort of pretext in the other two movies. So how'd you guys feel about that?
I really didn't like it. Actually, this is one of the few complaints I have with the script, is actually that I felt like this whole, purported relationship that they try to set up with Poe and Rey feels extremely forced. And like you said, Seth, just out of nowhere. I mean, I want to say even last episode, we talked about how, at least in the real episode 9 that we received, Poe and Rey had not spoken on screen, at least, until the start of that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's still technically the case here for us, because they still didn't speak in 7 or 8, even with the script. So I didn't like that whatsoever. I thought it felt very forced in the script. And in fact, I think as a whole, what they should have done was just left her without a love interest. I don't think it's needed, to be honest with you. And I'd say that for the real episode 9 too. I felt like the Kylo stuff was kind of forced as well, personally.
I think the entire movie hinges on her being in love with someone. like the finale of the movie, like the entire point.
Which one?
Which one? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, of the script.
Yeah,
Like, I think that's critical to the story. I like that they act like this isn't the first time he's done this, though, right? Because I think I brought this up that like one of my issues between episode 7 and episode 8 was that episode 8 takes place 30 seconds after episode 7, right? And like every other Star Wars movie, there's been just kind of like an assumption of like time passing, and like I got that way more effectively here than I did in episode 9.
That's
They
true.
still have like an established relationship in Rise of Skywalker, but the way it is here, like it feels like a deeper relationship. Like they act like siblings in Rise of Skywalker a little bit, right? Like it's a little bit
Yeah.
like, hey, don't take my fucking Walkman, like the way she's like talking about the Millennium Falcon to him.
Yeah.
And here it's just like, it's clear that like he's made his move before, he's been shot down a bunch, and she's like, dude, you know the rules. Like it seems like an established thing. And like I said, like I think the entire third act hinges on this being believable, and I believe it personally.
that
Yeah,
does
so
make
do I.
sense.
So I believe it. I just wish that there had been some sort of setup in the previous movies at all.
Wish they talked in 7. Wish they talked in 8. That would have been neat.
Yeah. Yeah. If they had any sort of conversation whatsoever.
Even if he was like, "Hey, what's up, Ray?" and that was all we got.
Yeah. But I do think that you're right, George. Like I said, in an isolated movie, this relationship makes a lot of sense, and it's very believable and relatable too. I mean, we've all been there, right? With a relationship like that, where it's just not quite off the ground, and there's always like some sort of barrier there. But
Austin's married, still not off the ground, right?
That's right.
Right. But one thing that I think is really cool is this plane falls through. They end up in a giant firefight. They steal a Star Destroyer. And wow. What a way to get the movie running, right? Like they're not just like stealing a small ship. They steal a Star Destroyer in the beginning of this movie. It just out of improvisation. And I think that the whole idea of like BB-8 flying alongside them and jumping from ship to ship is pretty cool, because BB-8 was undercover on the orbital ring, and they're escaping, and BB-8 actually jumps through space, through the what would you call them, the force field barriers, into the Star Destroyer right before they take off into hyperspace to go back to the rebel base. And I think that's a really cool image of them, arguing over the controls, like, hey, can you fly this? And Poe's like, I can fly anything, which is like so perfect for his character. And the one thing that I was confused about though was, where are all the troopers? I mean, I always assumed a Star Destroyer held like 20,000.
17,000, yeah. They said in the script that like they're all on leave. There's only the bridge crew behind.
So weird.
There's some line in there, like George said, that's basically just like, yeah, they're all gone except for the bridge crew. I love the on this topic though. I love the sequence where they all walk in, and I think it's Poe is like, all right, take us to XYZ place, and Rey's like, no, we're not doing that. She's like, she uses the Force powers on him, and she's like, no, please take us here.
Yeah. Although I looked it up as like an eclipse, because they kept calling it the Eclipse, and it felt really familiar. And that's because like an Eclipse Star Destroyer is like totally something from Legends, right? And it's like not quite as big as like the Super Star Destroyer that Vader's got in Empire and Jedi, but it's almost as big, and it has like that weird like front of a ship type thing where like it goes down, it extends almost like a crescent moon. And so I guess that was like one thing I wasn't paying attention to, because I'm pretty sure the ship in Star Wars Battlefront 2 that Iden Versity, I think that's called the Eclipse, but I can't remember. So I always thought it was like a really small ship, and then I looked it up. I was like, oh no, this is a big beefy boy.
Oh yeah, this is a big deal. So because along with the Star Destroyer, they steal all the weapons and artillery and machinery that was stored in the Star Destroyer, sort of like an aircraft carrier, right? And they take that back to the rebel base. So it actually is kind of a huge deal that they just kind of improvised and stole a Star Destroyer, which I think is pretty cool.
On the size, by the way, they mentioned toward the end of the script when they're in this thing, they're like, they've got the actual Star Destroyers coming after them, and I think it's Leia. There's some line where she's like, "Never, never have Star Destroyers like momentum seemed so fast before." So it's very evident that this one in particular is like massive compared to the other normal little Star Destroyers, I guess, quote unquote.
So I thought it was really cool. But someone at some point, I forget when, notices that it's Rey, the Jedi. They literally say it's the last Jedi is with them. So they call the Knights of Ren, who finally make an appearance right in the third movie, and their ship is called the Knife 9. It says it's shaped like an arrowhead with adjustable wings, and they follow it back to the orbital ring. So I guess all ships are sort of shaped like an arrowhead. So I don't know, but the Knights of Ren come out. Hataska, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Hataska Ren, Laurel Ren, Jadic Ren. I think that is just 3 of them. I think, right? Yeah. Oh no, Ott Ren is there as well. So I don't know that they ever named them at all in Rise of Skywalker, but essentially the First Order has these Knights of Ren as like the specific Rey hunting crew, and this leader Hataska Ren is wielding the Darksaber apparently.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that came into play. I think they were just gonna wing it with this movie and then figured out later how he got the Darksaber. But very interesting, I guess. Now I don't know that these are the actual Knights of Ren that we got in Rise of Skywalker.
I honestly don't know enough about what we got. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they were actually named in the Rise of Skywalker. I think this was the first time we were given them any sort of like names and identities. But they later are given like a backstory in the comics. I think it, like I said last week, literally called the Knights of Ren. So they're hunting Rey down, and then we get what I think is really cool, a scene on Coruscant, which we didn't get in the sequel trilogy. I don't think at all, right?
Maybe like a half second, like in the special editions when the Emperor died. You know, they showed Coruscant just people partying.
But they apparently go down to the lower levels of Coruscant, almost on like sort of like ground level. They say that they go down below like decrepit architecture from the Old Republic. So they go down very low on Coruscant, and there's all kinds of rebellious activities down here. They got the First Order with like graffiti on it. Some kid throws a piece of concrete at a First Order trooper and runs through the streets. So a lot of unrest in the streets of Coruscant. And this kid, we were introduced to a character named Daddy. I don't know.
I just thought it was Dade, like Miami.
That's
Dade
what I
County.
thought.
Dade, yeah. He becomes a more important character later on, but he's a new character that is sort of like a rebellion, I don't know, agent on Coruscant, and we get a scene of Chancellor Hux on a giant hologram beheading one of the aliens that we got in that orbital ring planet thing. I'm kind of stumbling over my words. We're in uncharted territory here. I've never tried to go over a script before, so I apologize.
Well, it's hard too because it's not like burned in our memory. Like it's harder to describe something you read than something you saw, in my opinion. So,
but I thought this was pretty cool. We have a literal guillotine set up here being displayed in Coruscant on a massive hologram, and they make it pretty clear like they're not messing around here. So I don't know. Do you guys have any opinions on the Coruscant decapitation thing?
I thought it was pretty cool, and I thought as a whole the sequel trilogy could have really used a setting like Coruscant, such a familiar setting. And you know, for those that have read and watched so much of the expanded Star Wars universe with the Clone Wars, and you know, I was mentioned earlier this year that I was reading the the first canon Thrawn book from Timothy Zahn, and a major portion of that book is set on Coruscant, where they're talking about like the Empire training facilities and like how the Jedi Temple was the Emperor's palace and all that stuff, and just really interesting stuff on Coruscant. And it would have been a good connection point, I feel like, as a series to have, aside from Tatooine, like a familiar planet that's spanned, quite some time at this point.
Right.
My favorite part about this, sorry to interrupt, Seth, but
You're
like
fine.
about doing it on Coruscant, not just that it's a familiar place that ties, the prequels, the original and sequels together, but I think a big problem with the sequel trilogy is like you just don't see a lot of stakes. And that's not like as important in the original trilogy. I don't know why I feel that way. Probably because I just, I've been seeing those movies since I was 4 years old, and it's hard for me to criticize them. But like in episode 7, we see planets blow up from a distance, and like that's horrible. But we're seeing people we don't know. We're seeing planets we don't know, and like someone pressed a button from across the galaxy and they died. But like at least here we're seeing like how shitty it's gotten. Like it's like in The Lion King, right? When like Scar takes over Pride Rock, and then like it takes 2 years to see it completely go to shit because he just throws everything out of balance or whatever. And so like you're actually seeing them be assholes. You're actually seeing why they're wrong. Like in episode 8, they fought on like a salt planet, like an abandoned mine, but it was like just them. We didn't see, like no one else saw them fighting each other, right? And then in episode 9, kind of the same thing where it's like, oh, they're gonna fight on some planet that has no population. It's just evil people. It's just a fleet of ships, and it's like hidden in the galaxy or whatever. But like, there's no like righteous moment like there is in this movie script, where like you actually see them stand up in a place that means something. So I appreciated the change of scenery here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the idea of a lightsaber guillotine is pretty cool. So the movie, it says light blade guillotine, but I feel like it's kind of implied that it's like a lightsaber blade that's going across, that slices this alien's head off.
I thought it was either something like that, or like in, I think it's episode 8, they show like the axe things that have like the small little like kind of ionic things in front of them. I was thinking something like that was a possibility too.
Yeah. Yeah, you might be right about that actually. But then there's the scene of Chancellor Hux meeting. I thought this was actually kind of a weird scene. Someone named Lord Gerlid, and he's sort of a underground crime boss. And he's essentially like expressing his Chancellor Hux, I guess now. Chancellor Hux running the whole First Order while Kylo Ren is out seeking knowledge. And this is like a reoccurring theme throughout the script, is like Hux doubting himself and being very insecure of his position, and Kylo Ren. In fact, there's several times throughout the script where he just tries to use the Force because I think he's feeling insecure that he can't use the Force. Is my take on it.
Yeah,
on how to describe it.
His character is great in the script.
So there's a quote here from one of these bosses. It's Skywalker they believe in, not the law, and his apprentice, this girl, this Jedi. She's become the symbol of hope. And this is another reoccurring theme throughout this script, is that Rey has become like an unwilling symbol of hope. And it's a massive amount of pressure that's crushing down on her shoulders, because she doesn't believe in herself, but everyone else believes in her. And it's against her will, right? So this becomes like a massive part of her character throughout this script, that she's just, everyone's looking to her to fix the galaxy, and she kind of doesn't want to right now. She's dealing with a lot. But then we transition to Mustafar, and I thought this scene was awesome, of Kylo Ren breaking into Darth Vader's castle with Luke Skywalker, not just like talking to him, but almost taunting him in a way that's very Luke Skywalker-ish. to find this Sith holocron. And it doesn't really say what he's looking for exactly. He just knows that he has these visions and he's looking for something. And in Darth Vader's castle, I think is where he decided to start looking. Luke Skywalker, it says in the script, is haunting his nephew like a spirit.
Love it.
Luke says, "This is where the dark path leaves an empty tomb." And Kylo says, "Where did your path leave? You're a ghost." Luke says, "I know what you're searching for, Ben. Your master promised you strength, but you feel hollow." Kylo says, "Soon I'll be even more powerful than any Jedi, even you." And Luke says, "Are you sure?" And I think that's so awesome. Like, so awesome. I can just, you can kind of just picture Luke Skywalker just like following him around, just taunting him constantly. And I think that is something that I would have loved to see.
Is that very Jedi?
No, it's not.
But it's pretty Uncle though. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty Uncle, and he actually says right there at the end, after Kylo swings his lightsaber at him, "Go home, Ben. Go home to Leia." And it says that Kylo is shaken when he says that. So it's implied in this script, even though in this script Kylo is a much more villainous character than he was in Rise of Skywalker, that he still has that connection to Leia. So I think that's important. It's especially important when it comes towards the end.
On Luke, I'll just say that one, he is so much more prominent in this movie than the actual Episode 9. I mean, even though he obviously died at the end of Last Jedi, he is very much present throughout this movie, or the script rather, which is really fascinating to me. I think it's a nice spin. And on a second note, he feels more like Luke would feel to me.
Yeah.
Based off of the writing in his character here.
Yeah.
He shows up for Rey later on, and there are just moments throughout that really feel like Luke should.
Yes. I would 100% agree with that. So apparently Kylo walks up to like this altar, and there's a Sith holocron on it. I guess probably from one of Vader's last interactions in the castle. And Kylo Ren opens it up, and it's Emperor Palpatine. I think this would have been a really cool scene to see. Emperor Palpatine saying, "Lord Vader, young Skywalker will soon be ours. I have foreseen it. But we must prepare for the unforeseen. Should he strike me down, you will take him to the Remicor system. There you will find Tor Valum, Master of the Sith, Lord who instructed me. Here, young Skywalker will acquire great ability beyond what you could hope to command in your damaged state. With it, he will harness the untapped power of Mortis. At last, we will realize the destiny, potential," and it blinks out and like there's some sort of attack to him, like scars his face really bad. But this explains the weird scene in Episode 6 where Palpatine was like taunting Luke to strike him down, right? And it's like, yeah, sure, Vader was there, stopped it. But what if he wasn't? Like, what if he wasn't that quick? And I always thought that was kind of like an odd scene, but I think this is pretty cool because it ties back into Episode 6. It ties back into that final battle of Palpatine. Like, oh no, he had a plan the whole time if Luke struck him down. So I think that would be pretty sweet.
I disagree. I think that scene makes sense because it's one of those things where it's like, if you kill me, then I win because you will have given into hate. So I disagree with that, but I always love the idea of just the Emperor having, all these machinations. I think that's secretly like one of the coolest parts about the comics, especially like the Darth Vader comics throughout the years. It's just we're always seeing Palpatine up to shit. And I feel like he's just a fucking weird old guy in the movies. He's just a real creeper dude. But in the comics, he's always spinning webs. And it's cool to see him spinning one of those in the movies.
Yeah. So my thing with the strike me down scene is that Palpatine, because at this point in the movie, in the series, we didn't realize, I guess, that Palpatine had like a cloning thing going on. And it always seems weird to me that without that information, Palpatine would take the risk of dying, because he's putting a lot of trust in Darth Vader, is what I'm saying, to defend him when Darth Vader clearly hates him, but can't escape his grasp. Now, the one thing I will say though that I dislike about this script is this Tor Valum character.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit, doesn't make sense. Not a fan of Tor Valum, because he's the master of the Sith. Like what happened to the rule of two? Like what is going on with this Tor Valum? But I guess we'll get more into that later. It says there's an invasive pulse of energy spreads over Kylo Ren's face like a cancer. Horrible raw purple veins streak through his skin.
Well, it did like a DNA test, right? Because it was coded for Vader, right? That was the interpretation I got. And so like it started because he is a Skywalker, but then it was just like, wait, you're not Darth Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
You're that other asshole. And then just fucking ices him basically.
Yeah. And it almost seems like a curse, like a magical like D&D type curse that like got into his face, because it's mentioned later that like it like spreads almost. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. But the next scene we get is back on what is that planet called they're on? Oh. It doesn't say. Oh, Korolev. That's what it is. Korolev. That's where the Resistance base is, and it's Leia feeling Ben, and then the Star Destroyer coming, like landing down, and them like, you know, explaining what happened, and kind of like saying like, hey, we failed, but we got like this massive boost in artillery and you know, power for the rebellion. And this is where we get a lot of the angsty teen type romance. I'm not disparaging it, but this is where like we get a lot of like the exposition between Rey and Poe, where, you know, Finn is kind of comforting Rey, and then they're all having these, I don't know, internal discussions about their relationships. Any thoughts on this?
I don't know. I guess I find it pretty interesting. I know part of this too, when they bring back the Star Destroyer, isn't Leia like, well, now we've got to leave because you because you brought this thing here.
Yeah, she was like straight up pissed, which I thought was pretty funny.
Which is a pretty good line. Yeah, I like that sequence.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense, right? Because like, oh no, we didn't steal just like a small ship. We stole like a asteroid sized spaceship that even if you take away like the trackers, they're going to be able to find. So then they come up with this plan to reconnect the galaxy to kind of create like some hope in a rebellion. And Rey opens an ancient text from Octu and sees that there was some sort of like mass relay system before the Old Republic. And there's sketches of the tower in the old Jedi Temple on Coruscant, light flowing from the spire into space, a force beacon engineered to call out the outlying systems to war. My thing is, how would they even know, right?
Yeah, if it was so ancient, I was thinking that. I was like, if it was so ancient and it hasn't been used in who knows how long, how would some of these places even know what to do if it was activated?
You know, there's a massive light shining out of our planet, right? Like,
but I will say this is, and I guess this is kind of spoilers for later on in the script if you haven't read it, but this is basically setting up what we did actually get at the end of episode 9, which is a mass of all these ships and, you know, just everyone coming together to fight the New Order. And this sets it up so much better, I would say, even with that confusing point, with it being like, does that even make sense? At least there's a reason for them all coming together, unlike in the real episode 9, in which Lando just brings everyone somehow. He suddenly just convinces like millions of people to show up, and it's never explained. So
we discussed last week. I mean, he fucked his way through the galaxy. That's what he did. That's how he united everybody. And then we get a pretty cool scene of Rey training in the dojo, and Luke is training her from the afterlife, which I think is pretty cool. It actually doesn't give you much reason to believe that Leia is training Rey at all in this.
No.
Which makes sense because I think until episode 9, it's not confirmed Leia had any Jedi training, right? She could use the Force, but I think it was episode 9 that gave her the Jedi background.
Yeah. They don't show any like Jedi training or her with a lightsaber until that flashback sequence in 9.
That's what I thought. Yeah, but Rey's got this wooden bow stick. I'm assuming something like a botan from the description of it, not like a bow staff. It could be that as well. But anyway, she gets trying to see here. Yeah, she gets like a lecture from Luke Skywalker here, where she's like, pain is an illusion. Just it isn't actually, which I think is kind of funny. And then she falters, sensing a disturbance. I don't know where I'm going here, guys.
All good, man. You're just working your way through the story.
I think
she has a Force vision here, is what's going on. Yeah. And she sees Kylo Ren activates his red lightsaber, facing off with Rey before the two thrones of Mortis. And this is a reoccurring vision that she's getting over and over again of Kylo Ren striking her down. And she has this conversation with Luke about it, and Luke confirms that she saw the future. And what I think is interesting about this is that Mortis has only been shown in the Clone Wars, on like a very specific episode of the Clone Wars that had a large impact on the overall story, but 99.9% of the Star Wars fan base never saw that. And I thought was pretty cool that they're tying everything together in Duel of the Fates with Mortis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love this tie-in because Mortis, that arc in Clone Wars is, like you said, super impactful, and it's interesting from a Force perspective. It sets up a lot of really interesting lore behind the Force and the Jedi and the Sith, and it just makes sense for them to pull in Mortis like in this situation. I mean, the way it's presented in this movie, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. So Luke explains that there's an ancient power underneath the temple in Mortis. They never really explain what that power is, but it says if Kylo reaches the temple, all we fought for will be lost. You have to confront him and kill him. And Rey is very hesitant to do that, and it kind of has the same logic that Luke had in the last episode, where she's like, she says specifically, balance, dark suffocates the light, light extinguishes the dark, over and over again. How is that balance? And that's something that I've always thought too. Like, how was Darth Vader killing Palpatine bringing balance to the Force? It didn't make any sense at all, right? It's a very large plot hole in the first 6 episodes. Because that's not balance, right? That's just one side, the light side taking over, and I think that's kind of how the Jedi ended up falling overall, because they didn't have the dark side to keep them in check.
Yeah.
But let's see here. The next scene we get is Kylo Ren getting a new mask. Apparently it helps him breathe, sort of like Darth Vader.
He said it was like more guttural and different. I actually really like this idea because I think what's funny and also sad and interesting about Kylo Ren is the fact that, like, I hate how like meta it is with the fact like he just wants to be Darth Vader so fucking bad,
right?
And like the fact of the matter is like, no, dude, like you are no Darth Vader, and so
right
to have him, like, I thought that was like why I really love that moment in The Last Jedi when he or I guess Snoke breaks the helmet, right? And it was just like such a fucking baby move when it was like reforged, but like it had the red cracks in it in
Right,
Rise of
right.
Skywalker or whatever. And so the fact that like in seeking power, he destroyed himself the way Vader did,
Right. Right.
And so I love the fact that like he's not just saying he wants to be Vader, but like, nah, dude, you fucked up just the way Vader did. So you're
Yeah.
actually like earning it a bit more.
I'm gonna move forward here, else we're gonna have a 4-hour podcast again. But we get the first scene of Hux trying to use the Force, which I think is would have been pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then we get what I believe the scene of Rey and Poe having a discussion where Rey's like, "I'm going to Mortis," and Poe's like, "No, you're not alone," and then Rey eventually gives in, and Poe joins her, but they decide that they're gonna do they're gonna activate the beacon first, right? That's kind of how that goes. And they go to this planet. Let me see where I'm at here. I forget what the planet's called. Do you guys remember what the planet's called?
I do not, but it's the cool one with like the
Bonadon or something like that. However you say it.
Yeah, it's the one with like the lily pad landing structure, right? Where like the things float, and it's like a water friendly place.
Right, here's the concept art for it. Bonadon. Whatever.
Boner Dan.
Boner Dan. Yeah, Boner Dan. I feel like the desert planet on The Rise of Skywalker was heavily inspired by this planet, because it seemed like they had a similar vibe going on, where like there was like this giant party going on in Bonadan. But this is where they find what was it? An old Jedi temple? Was that what it was?
They go there. I can't remember what exactly they're looking for.
No, they're going there. They're looking for they're looking for Poe's friend, who says like,
that's right,
she can find it anywhere in the galaxy. So if you're looking for Mortis, she's the one to take you to. She's Force sensitive like you, not like you, but kind of like you.
That's right.
And so he takes her there. It's like Bova Kiss or something, I want to say, unless that was like the dude who's executed in the beginning of the movie. Hard for me to associate Star Wars names when I don't have a face.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Nomi was her name.
Okay. Looking for Nomi to try to figure out a way to get to Mortis, because no one can get there.
This seems to have been a repurpose from in episode 9, obviously, where we got them going to the planet with Babu Frick, and they meet up with Poe's old friend, whose name I forgot 6 times last episode. George, you seem to remember her name every time, but the woman wearing the gold mask,
Zora.
Zori Bliss.
That seemed to be a spin on this. Was the way I read it.
Yeah, I don't know who Nomi is, but I guarantee you she's not as hot as Carrie fucking Russell. So.
Well, I think Nomi's described as like a very tiny, almost like a dwarfish person. They said it looks like a child, right? But she's almost like a counselor. It said she was counseling 2 aliens on the brink of divorce.
Yeah, I assume it's basically like, hey, what if we made Maz Kanata but useful, right?
Yeah, true. So basically, Rey and Poe find this character, and she has these marbles, and shows Rey where Mortis is, and says that Rey has to make the journey alone. At the same time, Finn and Rose are going to this old Jedi temple. I can't remember the name, what planet they're on, but they're
on Coruscant.
Yeah, they're on.
Was it Coruscant? I thought it was okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was Coruscant. Yeah.
Did you read the script, Seth?
I did, but I'm trying to like jump through it here so we don't have like a massive 5-hour podcast. But they break into Coruscant to activate this beacon at the same time, and I thought this was a pretty cool scene. I actually really liked the Finn and Rose story in this, and how they went off on their own and gave Finn much needed character development in this movie.
It rounds Finn's character arc out in a way that did not happen.
Yes.
In what we actually got, and I know we'll get to it, but yeah, the stuff on Coruscant with Rose and Finn, I loved.
Yes, I agree. And at the same time that's all happening, Kylo Ren ends up on Remicor and ends up finding this is remember it's assumed that it's like this massive desolate planet, very dark side planet, and finds Tor Valum. This scene in Tor Valum teaches him how to like extract the life out of beings. I am not a fan of this scene. The only cool part is, Kylo goes to a force cave and fights Darth Vader, ends up getting his ass whooped. But it seems like a rehash of Yoda and Luke Skywalker, but it's Tor Valum and Kylo, and we're not really given any backstory on the Tor Valum guy, and he just seems like he's kind of thrown in there.
Palpatine said it was his. I think he said Lord of his master.
Yes.
And so it's the guy who instructed Darth Plagueis, right?
Yes.
And so like I like the idea that it's, hey, here's like a non-Sith person who knows Sithy things. I think that makes the universe a little bit bigger. Especially like I understand like the rule of two, I get that. I think the rule of two fucking sucks, man. Like it keeps the universe so small, right? It's like, oh, there's only two bad guys. Well, we know one of them. Other one's probably out there somewhere. We should probably find him. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, what got me excited about the Old Republic game trailer is like, oh, that's an army of Sith marching on the Jedi Temple against an army of Jedi. Like, that's sick. Like, sign me up for that shit all day. And so I like the idea that there's this person who's like Sith adjacent but not quite Sith. And he's like, no, dude, like I don't care about like your shitty power ideals. I just want my power. And I like that. And I do like that it parallels the Luke Yoda thing, just to be like, hey, like there's a valid experience for going to the dark side. Like, hey, like there is instruction to be had here. There's an education for the things you want. But I don't know, like why not make a Korriban?
I think
it seemed very odd.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a real scenario, and obviously this would have involved a rewrite of episode 8, but I think what would have made more sense if this was actually 3 cohesive movies, as they should have been, was that this character that they're setting up here is actually Snoke. And that, I know initially when episode 7 came out, there were people theorizing that it was Darth Plagueis or someone connected to Darth Plagueis, Snoke. So had he not died in episode 8, I think it would have made a lot of sense for, Snoke to end up being this character. But obviously that's not what we got. So
right. It just seems odd to me because he shows up for like 5 minutes. It's like, oh, here's Ron Remicor, here's some like a new ability, and then Kylo Ren just takes it.
Kylo's like, oh yeah, you're dead, buddy. See ya.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have told me that.
Peace out, dude. But then when that happens, Rey senses it, and she's like, we got to hurry up. Like Kylo Ren's getting more powerful. So, I'm trying to figure out. Then I think the next thing that is interesting that happens is Poe or Rey, Finn and Rose activate the beacon, and that alerts the First Order to their location. And they have to start running from the First Order. Rose ends up getting captured. Finn goes on the run through Coruscant, and they're kind of running 3 stories at once here at this point, where then Rey and Poe and Chewbacca all get in this melee brawl with the Knights of Ren, who show up to kind of, I guess, kill them.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you guys think of this scene?
I thought it was cool. Always love seeing like an asymmetrical fight. Where it's like, how is Poe useful in in a situation like this?
Right.
But I like we said, like I think that this scene, especially like the scene that follows the fight here, like I think this really does illustrate the relationship incredibly well. And I do like how intimate and like self-protective they were in the fight. And like that one part where I think Poe gets grazed by like a blaster. Like that's when she fucking loses it, and that's when she like taps into the dark side and is able to actually like win the fight.
It makes a whole lot more sense than just her getting frustrated because she can't pull the ship down from Kylo.
It does.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked much about the Knights of Ren themselves. I can't find it. I was trying to look through the script, but there's a point where they describe them like flying around in the Knife Nine, and they have some really interesting descriptions. Like there's one part where they mention, I forget what exactly they say, but like the guy's like hooked up with a bunch of wires or something, and just
that
very
that
cool.
was taken and repurposed into the High Republic books. There's a character in the High Republic books who doesn't need light speed lanes. She can navigate through light speed, like she has like a force ability almost, and she can just kind of like teleport ships anywhere she wants. But she's constantly hooked up in this like tube system controlling the ship. And I think that's kind of how I think that was kind of taken from
That's
the script.
interesting.
It seems like that to me anyway.
Yeah.
But in this melee brawl where Rey's fighting these Knights of Ren, this is the first time we see a flashback of these Knights of Ren, and she recognizes them and turns angry, gets full of this rage, which she doesn't realize, she doesn't understand where it's from, and just toasts the leader of the Knights of Ren, just like absolutely just like blasts him. Pretty cool scene, sets up the overall like twist in her character later, which I know Austin you had some issues with. We'll get to it. And then Rey realizes, I think, that this is too much of a dangerous mission for Poe to go along with, uses the Jedi mind trick on him, which is they're Jedi are actually forbidden from doing this. And she does it. She forces Poe to go back on the ship and leave her, and she takes the Knife 9. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Blade 9 Knife 9 on her own. But you know, Poe is like trying to resist her Jedi mind trick, and she's like she like over and over again is like exerting more and more force, trying to force him to get on the ship with Chewbacca. And I think this is a really cool scene because Poe is like no, I don't want to leave you and do this, and she's like, no, you have to, and like it forces him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Something we haven't really seen Jedi do before, especially like a main character. I think it's a pretty neat scene there.
This was definitely one of the scenes I cried at. I thought this was like a really powerful scene, just to
I agree.
show like how far she has surpassed him, and just like how much they don't want to do this, but how much they have to do this. I thought it was great.
Right. And I know I'm skipping through here, guys. If I skip over anything you want to talk about, just jump in. Let me know.
I did want to mention earlier, because I think we kind of breezed by it, when Rose and Finn are on Coruscant, there's just because this is going to be important later on, they come across a stormtrooper at one point named RK514 is what his call sign is, and they basically, I forget what exactly happens, but essentially they spare this guy's life, and they're kind of Finn's kind of like, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's essentially like, you don't have to do this type thing, where he explains to the stormtrooper, like, do you even know who your parents are? Do you even know where you're from? Kind of thing. And they just kind of leave after that at that point. But I just wanted to bring that up because that is like a really important point for later on.
It is important. And it makes sense for Finn's character. Finally, like we get some callback to like his stormtrooper roots, and he essentially what happens is he stuns him and just kind of like explains to him like kind of tries to undo the brainwashing of the First Order, I guess is the way you describe it. But super cool scene. Finally something for Finn. I think it was really neat. And then the next thing that happens, right, is pretty much the Mortis thing,
pretty much mixed with some of the stuff on Coruscant over time. But yeah, those are really the big final two set pieces here.
The beacon gets lit all the way across the galaxy, and when they activate that, so all these planets just are like, all right, well, it's time to go to war, I guess. I don't know, but it's better than what we got in The Rise of Skywalker. Kylo Ren has this really interesting flashback with Han Solo. It says Han Solo stands in the doorway. He looks at his son with sadness and fear. Says, "What are you doing?" What are you doing, Ben? That's not my name anymore. Your mother can't see you here. Not like that. So he says it's explaining that Kylo Ren showed up to Han Solo's house, all black, not really giving a reason why. They said he's 17, maybe 17, and he's angry at Leia for sending him away to Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple to get trained with, which kind of confusing to me, but I guess I can understand it. Maybe he was a mama's boy. I don't know.
Angsty teen.
Yeah, but it says that scene mimicked the one on Episode 7 on the bridge where he stabs Han Solo. I thought that was pretty cool. So Harrison Ford was going to get his spot in this movie either way. He was coming back in Episode 9 no matter what.
Yep.
So
can't keep a good man down. Not one like Harry Ford of all people.
Nope. So we get Chancellor Hux rolls over above Coruscant, or no, not Coruscant. It rolls over above the Resistance planet, and just decides he's gonna start firing down on them. Just starts blasting, and they have to retreat, right? Or is it Coruscant? He fired on. Can't remember.
Fired on Coruscant.
Yeah, poor Coruscant, man. Can't
Coruscant. Yeah.
Yeah, can't get over it. So yeah, so then we get thrust into the final scenes of the movie, and what we get here is Finn becoming the symbol of hope for the Resistance and really taking that role on as the uniter and the person that he should have been, which is like, no, like look, if I can turn my destiny around and I can stand up, like you guys can too. And what ends up happening is they take the fight to the First Order. They use all the new weapons they got from the Star Destroyer, but they're up against a losing battle. And it's not until the reinforcements come with, of course, Lando Calrissian, right? Once again,
yes.
that and Lando and Leia have a scene earlier in the script as well that she convinces him to help, but it's not until the backup comes where they start to turn things around. And at the same time, Rey and Kylo are having this epic duel in the throne room of Mortis, and Rey actually loses. Kylo beats her, and not just beats her, but blinds her and leaves her to die bleeding there. And then we get this really cool scene of Luke Skywalker talking to him and being like, no man, like you don't understand, like the Force. And what's that famous quote? It's from Yoda, right? The Force binds us, or is it from Qui-Gon Jinn?
It's Obi-Wan in Episode 4. It's like
is it?
Yeah, it surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together.
And essentially, what this is in between these lines that Luke is giving to Ben, where he's saying how he's going to lose. Rey is, I guess, her getting fed these emotions from all the people that she cares about, and seeing all these scenes throughout the galaxy, and they're all like giving her like the encouragement to stand up. And she does, and it's like such a cool scene that I pictured in my head. The way they describe it is so good, of her standing up and her wrist wraps fall down and she puts them around her eyes, and she's now fighting Kylo Ren blind. And I think that is such a cool scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. And I will say, just right before all that happened, before she came back to fight him, she actually was like full on dead and was in like I guess the Force itself or something, and she was speaking with Yoda and Obi-Wan and Luke, which
that's right
really
she goes
cool.
to almost a world between worlds type situation. And they give her the option of just like dying or going back and they give her the extra life. What?
That happens later.
It does
it?
Yeah,
I thought it was when she died. I thought they were like, Leia was like, yeah, Rey's gone, I can feel it, and nobody can feel her. Oh, you're right. You're right.
She does that. Yeah,
you're right.
Does that when
you're right.
Kylo's,
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
later on.
Sorry, I'm the only one here who knows how to read. It's tough for our
It's
listeners.
okay. I feel like I'm on my back foot here.
No, it's okay. No, I'm so happy I'm not hosting. This seems fucking awful. But no, the scene I think is incredible, right? Because like I'm to draw like a parallel. This is like the dyad of the Force scene, right, in Rise of Skywalker. And like I'll be honest, like that moment like made me really like emotional, right? Because like it was just cueing in familiar voices, familiar characters, and it was just like them supporting this new character, right? And so like that meant a lot to me. It's just like them putting their weight behind it. But that's like really emotionally manipulative, and it's also like saying, hey, this character, unless they get like a voucher from everyone else, like can't stand on their own. I choose not to see it that way, but I totally get that read. And then this scene is her like earning it, right? Like this is her doing something incredibly badass and original, and then like doesn't really get the support from the previous two trilogies until after she does it. It's not before. Whereas in the movie, it was before she did it. It wasn't after. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Where So just that small detail of doing it after instead of before, I think is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, before we get further into the fight, I will say one thing we did bypass, not her last name, but we did bypass the origin of her parents and what happened to her parents.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So it's revealed that
No, that did happen earlier, George. I know that for a fact.
Sorry, this or have we talked about like him pulling all the life essence out of her and all that shit?
No.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay, that's when he says it.
The last name was later, but the whole thing with him or the Knights of Ren.
Oh, sorry, the reveal
killing,
the reveal that he was there.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was actually a problem you had with the script was like the age discrepancy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ray and Kylo.
So what? And maybe I misread this, but was he the one that killed her parents? Was that?
That's what it sounds like, or they at least hunted them down. And what he said was that Snoke gave them the mission to find anybody that could destroy him.
Right.
And it took them like no time at all to find her. And I'm not really sure what that means.
So
because it's very well established at the end of The Last Jedi, there's many Force sensitive children still.
This from a entire plot standpoint, I guess this is. I know I said earlier the Poe thing I had a huge problem with, but thinking about it, this is actually my biggest problem with this script. Is none of this makes sense at all to me. The first off, it doesn't. Maybe I didn't read it properly. I don't know, but it doesn't explain anywhere about like Rey's parents knowing Rey is Force sensitive or anything. Rey being like this powerful Force sensitive child. That's not mentioned at all. It is still confirmed that she's like kind of a nobody. I mean that is continued, which I'm fine with. I don't have an issue with that. Which that does come up later on. You are right about that, George. That is after where they discuss that. But the age discrepancy again, ignoring the whole fact of like why would he be searching for her specifically, unless she's someone special, which she's not because she's a nobody, quote unquote. The age discrepancy doesn't make sense at all because I don't know how old they are. I don't know if that's ever discussed. But for Kylo to have killed Rey's parents, I mean, I guess it depends on when he killed them. But even if he killed them like 10 years earlier, I mean, he would have hypothetically been like, what, 15 or something? I don't know.
I think it was supposed to be around the scene with him and his father, right? Like it's him explaining why he can't return.
I think so. Now, I could kind of forgive it. They don't really.
Yeah.
So there's 20 years, right? Is it 20 years between episode 6 and episode 7?
I think so.
So let's see how long.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was reading into this too far. Okay, 30 years.
There's 30 years. So I guess there is time. I could buy the fact that Rey was 10 and Kylo was 17.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know.
So yeah, but I also think I think she has to be younger, otherwise, like I'm struggling to think like why she wouldn't really remember. Like unless it's like, is it established that it's repressed memories? Because I know she's remembering more and more. But I always thought like it just based on the way the character looked in the flashbacks that she was like 5
That's
or 4.
That's
you know?
the way I always read it too.
So there's a 10-year discrepancy between. I just looked up in The Force Awakens. So this was canon, but when this movie was written, Rey is 19 and Kylo is 29.
Hmm.
Also makes The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker a little creepy. But whatever.
Yeah,
Because
but Poe is
Hold
also
on.
like 30, right? Because wasn't he born like just before or just after the
Well,
Death Star blows up?
none of this matters, Seth, because
But Aaron's
Anakin
32.
and Padme happened, and like so we can just kind of.
well, there was only a
Annie?
5-year discrepancy in between them.
Yeah, not if you looked him in the fucking face.
That's true. I guess to be fair, Anakin was the one with the crush. Padme was just a queen
That's
dealing
true.
with like, political shit.
The age thing
but-
isn't quite as important to me. It's more so just like the whole hunting them down, and
Yeah.
none of that makes sense literally at all.
They were hiding me from you. Snoke made his orders clear. Find anyone who could destroy him. It didn't take us long to find you. What is?
I
What
also
does
think
that mean?
it's important to note we have no idea which version of the script this is.
That's
right?
very
like
true.
If this is the first draft, if this is the 20th draft, we have a publishing date, or at least like a print date of December 16th, 2016, I think is what it said. Yeah, 12/16/16. So like that was 3 years before the movie was released in theaters. You assume an 18-month production, right, with 4 months of shooting, where they also do a lot of rewrites on the set, just because it's like, hey, chemistry wise this isn't working. How do we fix this? So this is like I'm considering this like the actual like barest bones idea of what the story was.
Yeah.
The other thing too
One
here,
thing-
you can realize it's early on because it was before Carrie Fisher's passing. There was so much here.
Yes.
Yeah, she's very involved
with Leia that just would not have been possible.
Well, she was still around. She wouldn't have died for another year, right? Didn't she pass away in 2017?
Mhm.
Right. But I mean, by the time they started shooting the film,
Oh yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't have been feasible.
One thing I did skip over here that I think is interesting is that Luke Skywalker becomes more of an actual like physical being in this. As Rey and Kylo are fighting for the first time, it says Luke Skywalker steps into the light. A thin blue glow traces his form, and he says the dark side has failed you like it failed my father. His love for his family saved him. I wish it could save you. And at some point later on, because Luke apparently is like chilling here the whole time. At some point, Kylo swings his lightsaber at Luke, and Luke catches it, which I think is pretty cool. And it explains that like towards the end, the blue glow from like the Force Ghost thing actually disappears, and it's almost more like Luke is actually there, probably because of the actual like latent power of Mortis. But yeah, Kylo defeats Rey, leaves her to die, and she gets empowered by all the her friends and the hope that they have, and they have like
Very anime
round
moment.
2. Yeah, like round 2. Like she stands up and like it's on, buddy, you know? But what I think is interesting here is that doesn't he actually beat her once again? I think he does, doesn't he? Because then he tries to like suck the life out of her.
Yeah.
Oh, she completely overpowers him, right? She destroys his lightsaber, and so like he's down on his knees right by like the well of the living force or whatever the fuck it's called in this, right? Because like they don't talk about like the pool of knowledge and the fountain of life and all that, right? Like was that the stuff that was in the Clone Wars cartoon, or was that from Legends, like with Abeloth and 0.
Abeloth was Legends. The Mortis stuff was Clone Wars.
Yeah, but like the fountain of life and the knowledge pool or what it doesn't matter. I don't think they mention that shit by name here, so they call it like the fountain of the living force or whatever. She beats him straight up in hand-to-hand combat, right? Like his lightsaber breaks, crushing his hand when it like explodes.
Yeah, it's like cuts off his fingers.
She's got him down on his knees, and then she reaches out a hand because she's still trying to save him. And then that's when he starts doing like the life force sucking shit out of her. And then that's like when everyone's stomach starts to flip across the galaxy, right? Like that's when Leia's freaking out. That's when Poe and Finn are freaking out. Chewie. Also, back on Coruscant, can we talk about the heartbreaking death that happens temporarily, kind of, sort of? Did we already talk about that? R2 gets fucking cased
Yeah.
While Rose is trying to set up her plan. And like everyone is just feeling it, right? Like they're hanging out in the pit. They're not loving it. And then I think it's Leia who like reaches out across the galaxy, and it's just like the way she says his name, Ben, like
Yeah.
gets him to like stop. And like that was the moment of redemption that he was looking for. And like that ties back into the conversation about like how love saved Vader. And how like Luke is so terrified that like nothing will be able to save him, but he has like that moment of redemption, right? Like it's like that old man is just like, no, I've lived a horrible life, but as long as I go to confession one time before I
Yeah.
die, like everything's gonna
Yeah.
be okay. And so he's sucking the life out of her, and then he like relents and then like hands it back to her, basically lets it go back to her. That's when she goes to like the ethereal plane. And before before she does that, before he finally passes, his last words were Solana, like your name is Rey Solana. Because no one is no one, which was, I thought, a really powerful, simple turn of phrase that they use beautifully in this script.
Yeah.
Incredible shit. God, the script is really good.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think one thing I think is a really powerful quote here is when Rey says, "Our masters were wrong. I will not deny my anger. I will not reject my love. I am the darkness and I am the light." And that's when she says, "No one is no one." And it's just like, no, she has become the balance of the force. Like she's figured it out.
Yeah.
And I think that is really cool.
Which
Just-
again does not retcon episode 8, because at the end of episode 8, Yoda and Luke are like, maybe it is time for the Jedi to die. And then in episode 9, Luke is like, nope, the Jedi, no, we need him back. And like,
I was wrong.
No, but like I think this ties in philosophically though, right? Because like they always thought the balance was an external thing, and what they failed to realize. And like Leia has this really important conversation with Rey too before she goes off, where she's saying shit like she's talking about how like Poe is like in love with her and how like she can see it. She's like, yeah, it's complicated. I've been there. You know, I used to fuck this dude named Han once upon a time. We worked together. It was weird. And she's just like, yeah, but I can't. And she's like, why? Because of some rules, people who died 1,000 years before you were ever born, like you're sticking to that. Like that's what's keeping you in check right now. Like go with what you feel good. And so the fact that like I think this movie does such a good job of like revolving back into itself and reinforcing previous ideas while also reinforcing its own ideas and just making really fucking strong arguments for them too. The idea that balance is something. It's like that quote about like was it Miss Marvel who's like, good isn't something you are, it's something you do, right? Like that's like her entire like mantra or whatever. And so we're like right here, like balance isn't something you find, it's something you are, right? And just powerful shit.
I agree.
If you want it to be, if you want, like I'm choosing to like really let the script affect me. Feel free to make fun of me in the comments, but like I like letting art make me feel good. So fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off. No, I found this script extremely powerful, and I come away from it being saddened that they scrapped it, because I think this may have been like this would have made the whole sequel trilogy worth it, right?
Yes.
Like people didn't like episode 7 because it was too similar to episode 4, and people didn't like episode 8 because it threw away all like the mystery and intrigue of episode 7 and slapped the fans in the face. And then, but like this would have made it worth it, I think, in the end. And I think it's a really, really nice end piece to the sequel trilogy, and it would have set it up for another sequel, because it turns out that Finn and Rose create this like sanctuary, and they are telling these. It doesn't really say how long, but Poe and Chewbacca go out looking for Rey after this. She's missing, presumed dead, but they chose to believe that she was just missing, and it doesn't say how long. I don't think that they're gone, but it's long enough that Finn and Rose create this sanctuary for these kids and tell them the story of what happened, and then eventually Rey returns. One thing I did think is weird is that the kids run up and hug her immediately, because
I don't think that's okay. I'm gonna push back on a couple things. One, you skipped over like one of the most beautiful lines in the entire.
I'm sorry.
All good. Sorry, I'm looking for it. Where is it? Where I can't find it. This is a 126-page script. But when they're talking about like how do you know she's out there? And they're just like, I can't feel her. And then everyone talks about like the surprising calm that they're experiencing, and they're like, that's her. I thought that shit was really fucking good, really tender. And they've just been telling stories about her this entire time, right? Like this is like a character that like I feel like they've basically imprinted onto these children as like kind of like the savior, like the one who can teach them. Like they basically, yeah, you said it, but it's basically like a fucking Xavier school for gifted youngsters, right? Like it's just like all the people who don't fit into like the existing paradigms. Fucking beautiful, man. Like the symmetry in this movie. Also, Rose. Wait, did we talk about Hux killing himself already?
No, I wanted to bring that up.
No, we forgot. To talk about that.
Hux kills himself with a purple lightsaber. That's Mace Windu's, right?
Has to be.
That's assumed.
They're on Coruscant,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so they have their capital building that like they're trying to break into. That's when R2 dies, when he was supposed to, get the shit across like the finish line and like scomp in to redirect the shit, because they find out the building is actually like a capital ship that has like a hyperdrive, right? And so they know that they're just going to escape, and Rose is like, no, we got to fucking end this now. She was being tortured. She escapes because she's incredible in this movie, super competent, super badass, super just loves getting shit done.
Character redeeming.
Yeah, and then BB-8 takes on R2's memory banks because, like, we've discovered that he just has every stored navigational code ever, basically, and just, like, ship certification, all this shit. And so they put the memory into BB-8, who traipses across the battlefield with absolute hell after fucking Chewbacca Top Gun Mavericks his way down to the planet's surface, icing everyone along the way. He gets in, the ship manages to take off, and then it's one of Austin's favorite lines from the script where Hux realizes, like, he realizes too late he has lost the Star Wars in the script.
It's so good.
Really
the line is excellent.
And then the ship, and it would never be in the movie. It's just for the people who read the script, which is like even more incredible. And so this thing starts to take off, and Rose is just like, yeah, I couldn't actually figure out how to shut it down, so I just redirected it. And then it just like it takes off in hyperdrive, just explodes across the galaxy. And I wonder if that was where they got the idea for like the High Republic shit, right? Like
that's exactly what I was thinking
in hyperdrive. But it's like a light that they can see for light years across the galaxy, and like that becomes a symbol of hope, even though people who don't know what the fuck it is. God, I love this script. Dude, I might read it again. It's so good.
I reread this part so many times because I'm just sitting there and like I can just visualize it. I can hear it, like just seeing this like ship go and smack into the side of a planet, like the boom, like I could see it in my head, and I wish that had happened on screen. It's such a cool moment, and like you said, Seth, character redeeming for Rose, because I mean they basically shut her down in the real episode 9 after she had a relatively prominent role in 8, and I liked her more along with Finn, her more involved role in this.
Respectfully, all she did in the Rise of Skywalker was she like fucking put her hair up.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was like the only thing she did, and she like shows up and just says like why things can't be done. And I know she was like on the Star Destroyer assault, but like no man, she's like an actual card-carrying member of the Resistance in this. Like she is responsible for shit getting done. It isn't just like fucking scene decoration. It's so good.
And that's what I love about this script, is that there's a lot of grittiness to it, right? Like Rose is in the trenches in this one. She's not just like Finn's like weird love interest, and I don't know, like I really liked Rose in this script, and I thought that Finn's whole arc of turning his experience around, and there's another great scene we didn't talk about where that trooper that he rescued, or that the First Order trooper that he rescued and spared, he converts a whole other squadron that helps them out in the final battle. And he said his name. What did he say his name was? I can't remember. Reef. Yeah. And I was like, God, that is such a great scene for Finn. I don't know, man. I can't make heads of why they changed this and why they scrapped this script, because it is phenomenal. This is the best Star Wars has been. Like,
and it's weird because you can see, obviously, as we've discussed, bits and pieces of it were jumbled around and repurposed in what ended up being 9. I mean, a good example there is at the end, we're just talking about those stormtroopers. They show up in 9. I mean, you've got those stormtroopers that show up on the planet, or that moon rather, near Endor, where the Death Star wreckage is, but they don't tie it into Finn at all. It's just kind of like, yeah, we're here. Yeah, we turn.
Right.
You had nothing to do with it. We're just here. And
Right.
it's sad to me that like something as powerful as that couldn't have at least been used. I mean, I don't know what the purpose was for at least emptying that out of the script that we got. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know who made that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. Colin Trevorrow wrote the best Star Wars movie and never got to be made.
Wrote it with Derek Connolly, who is like
Yes.
his writing partner. Like
Yes.
he wrote all the Jurassic movies. He wrote Safety Not Guaranteed.
Yes, and Derek Connolly.
Sorry.
No disrespect.
Well, no, it's just like we don't do it like on video games. We're never like, oh man, thank God, like
Yeah.
thank God the environment director so and so was there, just because there's too many people who make video games. But just from
Right.
short box summary, I'm like, yeah, I don't want anyone to feel left out. That's why I list like the letter and the
Yeah.
anchor and stuff. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
their names on the
Right.
book, they deserve it.
I was just gonna say, and you guys may have more of an opinion on this because I have not been watching Ahsoka because I haven't seen Rebels yet, but I felt like the stuff with Mortis, obviously having watched the Mortis arc in Clone Wars and seeing where Rey's character goes in this movie, it is very reminiscent of Ahsoka's character arc in Clone Wars,
Yes.
which is really interesting to me. You can tell that like Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly really respect the Clone Wars based off of the script, which is excellent.
Dude, like,
yeah, you're gonna like us. You should catch up and watch Ahsoka.
I know I
yeah,
need to.
you're gonna really Ahsoka. You're gonna be into it. But I know it's not gonna happen. I know it's super shitty. It'd be a terrible thing for Disney to do. But reading this makes me wish that they used the World Between Worlds to like just give us a glimpse of like a blindfolded Rey or something. You know, like, damn, that would be so awesome.
Show us a potential future that just as like a wink and a nod. I totally get that. One thing I kind of hold out hope for. Sorry, we've like reached like the end of the script talk, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Years later, like when Dark Horse still had the license for Star Wars comics, they released a comic called The Star Wars: The Force of the Wills, and it was like based off the original script that George Lucas wrote. Now, it wasn't awesome. I'm glad that movie got like a couple more revisions and a couple more drafts under its belt before we saw it. But I think that's really interesting. I think that's like exactly the kind of shit comics should live for, you know?
Yeah.
I think this would be an insanely cool 12-issue maxi series. Maybe even 8. Like, I don't know. Feels a little bigger than like a 6-issue, but 12 might be stretching it too much. But I think it would be incredibly, incredibly cool just to visualize this a little bit more. Like, see the way they describe Mortis, to see like the scars. There's like that one scene where they're talking about was it Hitaski? Like there was lightning flashing, right? And like that's when like someone's face lit up for the first time. And so it didn't talk about the horror that was their face. I assume it was like heavily mechanicalized and looks like Trapjaw or something from He-Man. But man, I would just like love to see a more visual interpretation of this, just because, like, Seth, I'm so glad you asked us to read this, man. I thought this was awesome.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice end cap to the sequel trilogy conversation, and I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I've been enjoying these Star Wars conversations with you guys, and this was definitely worth it, because and like I said, I walk away from this saddened that this movie never got made, and it was not their fault. It was some weird mandate from way above them, because they wrote a phenomenal story, and I have no idea what kind of crack they were smoking when they rewrote episode 9.
And it's sad because, like George has described it, the episode 9 we got feels like a fever dream. I think I started the start of last episode stating, and I would stand by this, that it feels like it was written by a chat GPT or an AI.
Yeah.
And this script, sadly, feels like the movie we should have got. I mean, it really feels like it concludes the entire saga. I mean, it concludes the sequel trilogy. and it's just frustrating knowing that this is there and we got something so just all over the place by comparison. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that it leaked. I'm sure there would have been a few edits had this actually happened. I mean, I'm sure there would have been changes. And I will say this too, because I think you may have touched on it earlier, Seth, when you were describing the way Rey looks. But
Mhm.
part of the leaks were also just a ton of concept art that Colin Trevorrow confirmed was real. He did come out and say, like, this was all real stuff.
Right.
And there's just some excellent concepts out there that you can look up and find from, again, the original title was Duel of the Fates for this script, at least. That's got some really cool stuff.
Him saying that, like me and Austin had said before, or before the podcast, him saying that pretty much confirms that this was the real script, because the concept art was so specific that there's no way it would have been a coincidence. To the point where, like, you know, we see like Remicor and Kylo Ren sucking the life force out of a tree, right? Stuff that never even existed before the script. Sure. So yeah, man. It's a shame now, George. Me and Austin were talking. We have like this weird sensation while reading this script. I don't know how you feel about it, but like, it feels weird to read this script knowing this was the original vision of Episode 9, and it feels like this is more of the real Episode 9 than the one we got.
I don't agree with that. I think this is just the one we wanted. I do think it's like a grass is greener situation, right? Because like we know what we got. Like, it's like when you start someone in fantasy and they put up 7 points, and there's someone on your bench who like hasn't played, but you're like, yeah, but they could have gotten me more than 7 points. Like, I wish I had swapped them. You know, it's just like living with that feeling constantly. I do think it's tough, just because I think we talked about this on a previous episode too, about Star Wars, where it's like, I don't think any of the shit that happens outside of the movies really matters. I gotta be honest. Like, I think it matters for fans, but like in terms of like cultural impact, like it might as well have not happened. So that's why like everything that's happening on Ahsoka right now, I know how I feel about it. Having seen majority of the Clone Wars and all of Rebels, I'm like, okay, like this is really cool to me. But I'm sure there's 80% of people who haven't seen that are just like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, what is this? And like might have think it's a bridge too far. And there's some stuff here where I can totally see people saying it's a bridge too far. And in Rise of Skywalker, there was certainly a lot of stuff that people were like, well, that's a bridge too far. So it's tough. I totally get that though, but I also don't want to be one of those. And like, I don't think you guys are being this way, so please don't take this as an insult. I don't want to be one of those dudes who's just like, man, what fucking could have been, you know? Like, I don't want to be that person who's just latching onto that for years and like resenting Disney for making a different movie that also made $1.5 billion and sold shit tons of toys. Like, you know, like it was just like, it just, that movie, I think this is it. I think because this is a script and because it's unproduced, I think that movie just feels way more cynical and cash grabby than this version does.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this one feels slightly more, because it connects to the other trilogies, I think, in a better way, despite Rise of Skywalker connecting in a very direct way to the previous trilogies. That one just feels gimmicky and lazy, and this one feels smarter. So I think, like, I agree that I like this one more, but I'm not going to be like pouting again. Not that I think either of you two are doing that.
And it is a good point though, because it's like, at the end of the day, this is just a script. I mean, had this actually been made, we're speaking entirely based off what we read, but in reality, like, would this have actually been better than Rise of Skywalker? I mean, we'll never know, but it is an interesting thought experiment.
I don't know how you can get much worse. So I think it's pretty objective to say. I mean, like, you could, but
from a plot standpoint, I'd agree.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on anything, or anything you want to get off your chest?
I want more people to read this. I want if you're listening and you're curious, it's extremely not hard to find this on the internet.
No,
it's not at all.
So I recommend checking it out. I was able to share it to my iPad. I just read it like I was reading a book. It was awesome. check it out. Read more scripts too. Scripts are really fun. If you have like a favorite movie, I guarantee you that script is available online. So just check out the script just to see like how do you get from here to here, because like I've read other scripts where I'm like, wow, the director really fucking saved this movie, right? Because there's like nothing. It's like a barren script and you're like, thank God for David Fincher having such a singular, unique vision that that really carried this project. Not that he doesn't have good writers, but it's just like it's so hard to like look at a piece of paper and like imagine the movies we've gotten from it. So I think this is a really fun exercise. I want to do more shit like this. Like, no offense to video games. There's a big Nintendo Direct tomorrow and a PlayStation Live event, whatever. We'll talk about video games soon. I think Austin's going to London soon, right?
Yeah, in like a month.
Yeah, you excited?
Very excited. Very excited.
I think the week you're gone, Ahsoka will have wrapped up. So Seth and I might jump on and do like an Ahsoka season recap. If you're into that, Seth.
Dude, Ahsoka's getting crazy.
I haven't seen this week's
I'm
episode.
down. I'm down for that.
Hoping
It's
my
good.
girlfriend is still awake so we can go watch it with her.
Yeah, it's real good. So,
Sweet.
all right. Well, Austin, any closing thoughts?
The only thing I would say is, God, I wish we had gotten Dual Blade Ray, because
Yep.
what a freaking cool thought experiment that is of having a hero character with a dual blade lightsaber.
That detaches. That was something we didn't talk about. Her
Yes.
lightsaber detaches from each other, so that's pretty cool.
Yes.
Very
Cal Kestis.
Yeah, very Cal Kestis. Maybe we will get it in the Rey Skywalker movie if it's not canceled, which, fingers crossed. I think that would be a good movie. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to be in your ear holes tonight. Thank you for joining us. You can find Frameskip pretty much everywhere that you would normally look up podcasts: Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Music, and YouTube. If you could please leave us a review, I'd really appreciate it. I will personally send you $4,000 for every review. That's a joke. I don't have that much money.
Whoa. I will not be doing that.
You can write us at frameskippodcast@gmail.com or at frameskippod on Twitter and Instagram. I am one of your hosts, Seth, at the 90s Kid on Twitter. George is at Shortbox Summary. Correct, George?
Correct.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was pretty sure you switched from Purple Bird 616.
I did. Yeah.
Austin is at Austin Jeller.
That's right.
So I was pretty sure you switched from Purple Bird 616, but I wasn't positive.
Coach, he's not here. We don't acknowledge him. Who is Coach? That's the question. Coach
is in Texas. So go find him there.
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled.
Just look for Mr. Clean.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, thank you for being part of the Frameskip Podcast, Star Wars Episode 9, Duel of the Fates retrospective. Goodbye. Good night. Love you.